Hi there. Welcome to the Play Up podcast with myself, Scott Mclachlan. I've got two very good friends of mine and very eloquent people, Jamie and Jeff, joining. We're going to chat everything Portsmouth Football Club. We hope you enjoy this. We're going to do this regularly if we can, and we'll see how it goes. But we're going to do about 45 minutes, hopefully, chatting about Pompey, and we'll see how it goes. Evening, gentlemen. Very good to see you, and thank you for joining me.
You all
Hello
right?
there.
So it was recently John Mousinho's first year in charge, and I mean it's been a success, whichever way you look at it. But it'd be interesting to know why you guys think it has been a success, because I must admit I was one of the people who didn't know anything about him when he was joined, and there was a lot of social media angst about it, the fact that he had no experience whatsoever and had literally just left the club as a player coach. So we'll have. What do you guys think? How do you think he's done what he's done in the last 12 months?
You know, if you look at the language that he was using when he first came in, I think sometimes in his press conferences he was a little bit naive. You know, we just recently played Oxford, and you look at that game last season at Oxford when we were just outside the playoffs and we drew, and we just couldn't finish. We just couldn't get the ball in the back of into the box. You know, we were devoid of ideas, and we came away. You know, Morel got sent off in that game. And he
Yeah.
came out and said, you know, a draw is a pretty good result. And it was like a bit naive for him to say. And you now roll on a year and you listen to how he's talking, you watch how he reacts. He's a quite calm, level-headed person, I think. I think he treats the players as adults. And I say that because I think Danny and Nicky tried to control too much. I remember having a conversation with Danny Cowley on the podcast last 2 seasons ago, and he said you can't mitigate risk, you can only eliminate it. And I went, no, you can't eliminate risk, you can only mitigate it, Danny. I said, you got that wrong. And he looked at me kind of coy, and I just think, whereas, you know, Danny was. Some people celebrated that he went round to the young players' house and checked up on them and made sure they were eating right, so on and so forth. That all stopped when John Mousinho came in. John Mousinho came in and he just treated them, you know, you're professional footballers. Your mind between the hours of X and X, but what you do in the evening, it's up to you. You're an adult. I'll treat you like an adult. But when you come back to that training ground, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock next day, you will work hard. And I think the players have responded to that. And you know, it's quite ironic that Danny and Nicky had a huge part in Rich Hughes coming in, and yet Rich Hughes was the one who pulled the axe on them. So, you know, this I think we're talking about John, but Rich Hughes in the background has played a huge, monumental part in John Mousinho's success.
What do you think, Jamie? Because I mean, it's interesting you talk about risk, because I think we'll probably go on to this in a bit when we talk about recent results and how this season's gone. Is that he seems quite risk averse, but I must admit the only thing I knew about him was he'd been the PFA chairman for a while, so he obviously had something about him. He'd obviously had the respect of players as a whole. So should it have been a surprise that he's treated players like adults? Really, if that's what his experience was.
So again, I'd never heard of the guy. I didn't have a clue who he was. I was furious, absolutely spitting feathers at the Eisners for going for the cheap option. You know, I love what they've done. You know, to the ground. But you know, the way I see it, if you've got £1 billion in the bank, then you at least, you know, that's the equivalent of having a tenner in your pocket and chucking 5p at the squad. And that, you know, and from where I sit, they've done it to the ground, they haven't done it to the pitch. Yeah, so I was absolutely furious. But he shut me right up, and you've got, you know, I respect anyone that does that. He turned it around. I'd like to see more. I've been pretty vocal recently online. I'd like to see more attacking play. I'm glad that the formation's changed. I think someone used the term one-trick pony, and it's not that I thought, you know, it was a one-trick pony, but that was the only pony. You know, that's the only trick we'd seen that pony do, was that same formation week in, week out for most of the season, and it just seemed, you know, he was reluctant to change it. But yeah, so what can you say? We're currently clinging on by our teeth, top of the league. Yeah, and he's just done really well. I like him. Yeah, he's same with the Cowleys. I really did like Danny Cowley. I warmed to him. I really did. But he was just full. He had a lot of hot air, didn't he? There was a lot of talk, and I had no idea what you just said in the background there, Jeff, about him going around players' houses in the evenings. Like, bugger off, you know what I mean? Yeah. It was driven me mad. Yeah, so
I mean,
yeah,
Cowley's last few press conferences, you could just feel the desperation
oh god, yeah,
from them, couldn't you? It's just he was thinking, I don't know what to do, and
giving up. He was on death row.
these players are not responding, and I can't. He knew he couldn't change it, and he didn't understand why, because he's obviously, as Jeff alluded to, quite a control freak and a planner and constantly on it.
I actually think I said it, I don't know, 18 months ago. I actually, I spoke to Danny quite a lot, text, phone calls, and everything. I was lucky. I was, one of the fortunate fans that he followed on Twitter straight away, and I thought, like, is this a parody account, or is he actually? And it was Danny, and Danny used to reach out quite a lot, and I was quite, like I said, I was quite fortunate to have kind of a working relationship with him in that sense, talking about stuff we've said on the.
Were you sort of like the fan conduit then for him? Were you kind of telling him the temperature?
I don't think I was a fan conduit. It was he would reach out every now and again. I think he would reach out when he thought maybe things weren't right or what was the general feeling or whatever. Now, I know we're meant to be talking about John, but the Monday before Danny and Nicky got sacked, Danny was meant to come on the podcast and talk to us, and he texted me and said, "Sorry, can't make it tonight." And it literally was. I looked at Liam and Ryan and went, "I think it will be Danny Cowley, football fan rather than football manager, by 9 o'clock tonight."
Yeah.
And it literally was. We finished recording the episode and it got announced that they'd been sacked. And I spoke to him briefly afterwards and everything else. But going to John, let's get back to John Mousinho. He has got something about him, and it was a gamble. Let's make no bones about it. It was a massive gamble by the club. Andy Cullen came out at the time and said, "We've got to try something different. We've got to, we've got to try something new. We've got to try something different." Going for experienced managers, going for managers who have managed in the Championship and getting players who have played in the Championship clearly isn't working. John's come in, and like I said, you cannot underestimate the impact Rich Hughes has had in the background. I was lucky enough in the summer. I went out to Spain with my eldest boy, and we stayed in the same hotel as the Pompey team on pre-season. And it was a really good insight to how the team were bonding out there, and how the team were acting, and how the bonding between Rich Hughes and John Mousinho. Every minute they were sat by the pool, but they were sat by the pool, and they weren't just sitting there sunning themselves. They were sitting there working. They were sitting there working out what they needed to do with the team, what kind of player they needed, what kind of tactics they were going to employ, everything else. And it was a really good insight to that what was brewing at that time. And I saw several comments on social media, and somehow this team isn't together. This team doesn't know that. And I was like, I'm telling you now, that team, if one of them got in the swimming pool, every member of the squad got in the swimming pool. If one member went to play table tennis, they all went and played table tennis. There was none of this, the little cliques and going off and doing their own things. They all done everything together. And that's the first time, probably in the last 2 years, that I've seen the squad do that.
How close? Were John and Rich rubbing lotion on each other, or...?
It wasn't that close, Jamie. It wasn't that close.
Probably a bit too early in their relationship for that kind of thing. Maybe next summer, do you think, that they might get
we can only hope.
Go off to a club together or something. But the thing is with John Mousinho, he's one of these new breed of coaches. So players these days, as you know, Jeff, they study the game from an early age, don't they? They don't wait until they're 35 and they're in their last season to start doing their badges. They start doing their badges from early 20s, don't they? And so they study the game. And John seems to be this new breed of manager coach, if you like, that have spent the last 10 years learning his craft. So it shouldn't be a surprise, really, that he walks into it in his late 30s, that he's effective.
No, and I think by John's own admission, when you listen back to previous interviews he's done, I think he was a bit taken back. He got a chance at this level. I think maybe National League or Lower League 2 he was kind of looking at. It would have been interesting if he was still at Oxford when Carl Robinson left. I think he probably would have been given the Oxford job there and then. Considering Robinson was open about he should be the next replacement and everything else. So people talk in the game, it's John Harley was on the same UEFA course as John Mousinho. Rich Hughes went in on that course and talked about director of football and everything else. So, football is kind of incestuous in that sense that the coaches and the managers, and they're always on the same courses. They talk to each other, and you'll find that some coaches played at various levels together, whether that be at the start of their careers, towards the end of their careers. So they do know people. Marlon Pat played with John Mousinho when Marlon Pat was on loan at one of the clubs. So that kind of relationship bonding and all that is there. And look, like I said, it was a gamble. It was a massive gamble, but it's a gamble that's paid off.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I think. I personally, I find his interviews quite dull, to be honest. But that's because I'm not sure he's very keen on giving a lot away, to be honest, when he's doing some of his interviews. I've literally about half an hour before this watched the pre-Northampton one with Neil Allen from the News, and that was all played with a very straight bat. There was no humour, joviality, any of that. Is just, I'm giving you an answer to your question. Here's the answer. Let's get on to the next question. So it's it doesn't have to be entertaining, I suppose, but you could at least see him. You could hopefully see him relax at some point one day, and just give a little bit more in some of his interviews. I mean, it must be dead boring doing it 3 or 4 times a week, I suppose. But
I think it is. But he's still learning his craft, isn't he? He's still learning.
Yes.
Players can go. I think it's easier for a player to go from playing to coach. Don't get me wrong. That's probably the wrong phrase. It's a hard job. But I think now you're in front of the camera, like you said, 3 or 4 times a week. News interviews, paper interviews, TV interviews. And if you're not used to being in front of a camera, or you're not used to public speaking in that sense, or being put on the spot, you've got a very steep learning curve. You might be the best coach in the world coaching players, but you can go in front of the camera and say the absolute most bizarrest thing.
I think the great British public puts a little bit too much faith in charm, as it is anyway. I always liken it to like running the country. We always vote for these smarmy, smooth talking or charismatic leaders. Everyone always says charismatic leader. That's not what you need. You need an accountant running the country, don't you? You need someone who's good with numbers. Someone that's good at managing people. And for me, I couldn't give a toss if John was as boring as a brick. As long as, and he's not that boring. I don't, he's straight talking. I think he's just, he's almost like the anti-Cowley, isn't he? Cowley was just, bless him, but he had an analogy for everything, and it's to me. Being able to talk has absolutely nothing to do with your ability. I mean, I'm quite good at talking. I can waffle on for hours, but it don't mean I'm any good at anything. I'm just, you just hold an audience, and I think I don't think that's a skill a manager needs personally.
No, and as Jeff says, he's quite early in his learning curve, so perhaps he'll learn to be, I don't know, a little bit more flexible in some of his interviews.
I don't think he's ever going to go in and throw the teacups around at half time.
No.
Whereas I remember being down the training ground once, and Danny was quite relaxed, and Nicky was absolutely going off on one, swearing at players, effing and blinding, saying this is not acceptable. And Danny kind of realised there was a group of fans watching the training session and had to go over to Nicky and tell him to calm down. But Nicky was losing it. Nicky was losing it big time. And I think that's the difference. I think, trust and respect is a two-way thing. I think that the current playing squad trust and respect John, and I think the playing squad from last season trust and respected him. Again, going back to being treated like adults, whereas Danny and Nicky never played the professional game. They were probably great non-league players and everything else. But, when you go into a professional environment, it's like me being in the army. I used to look at people in the reserves and go, yeah, whatever, mate. You do the same job. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not taking orders of you, whatever.
Is it a case of all the gear and no idea?
Yeah. I'm not saying about Danny and Nicky, that's the sense, but I just think that it goes back to that micromanagement. It goes back to that trying to control everything. If you don't respect and trust the managers or coaches above you, you are going to knock down tools, but you aren't probably going to react in the same way. So John comes in, John gets that automatic lift, and then we run out of steam towards the end of last season. But this is John's squad. He kept the players he wanted to keep. I don't buy into the theory of, we had to keep such and such players. They got rid of 10, 12 maybe players in the summer. They were ruthless. They were like, I don't want these players. And John was adamant about that. So this is his squad. These are his players, and these players are playing for him.
Yeah, and they are largely
his players, or are they Rich's players though?
Well, yeah, there's an element of that. I think, and this
depends how much suntan lotion's involved. I guess.
Yeah. It goes back to that dynamic. It goes back to what philosophy what footballing philosophy we're gonna have, what style of player we're gonna have. This is how I want to coach. This is how I want to play as a manager. It's then down to Rich Hughes to go and get that profile of player to fit that system, rather than Rich Hughes going, "He's the player." It's not like it's not like American sports where you have a team manager will go out and sign baseball, American football, or whatever. Will sign a player or sign players in the draft or whatever, and then tells the coach, "This is how you're going to play." These are your players. I've signed these players. You've got to make it work. I don't think it's that kind of scenario. I think there is a lot of hand in glove in this partnership.
I think it's definitely a new way of thinking for a Pompey fan. I mean, in my lifetime anyway, we've only really tasted success with the kind of manager who handled everything himself. Like Cookie, Redknapp, Alan Ball. They were all managed. They went off. They got their players, and they were their players. But like now, we've got this head coach system, and I guess the Americans have had an influence on that. But it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. Part of me does wonder if one of the reasons they brought John on in the first place is because if he fails, then it's easy to make him the scapegoat, and it's easy to replace him and cheaper to replace him. But I think that could almost backfire, because if he does really, really well, then someone is going to come along and swoop him up, or offer him he's not a Pompey lad. I think it's fair to say that the Eisners aren't the greatest payers in the world for wages. So his head could get turned in the future, and he's doing bloody well for us. But at that point, then do we find out whether it's Hughes that's the man pulling the strings behind the scenes, or is it John? So I think that'd be interesting to see if and when the bigger clubs swoop in.
And unfortunately, in football, inevitably most managers leave because they get the sack.
Sure, yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't happen for a very, very long time, but or he moves on, which would be good. Listen, we'll move on to the team itself, I think, and results. So the second thing I wanted to come to was, we're sat after 30 games on 60 points, which isn't too bad, and we're top of the league. Obviously, it looks a bit precarious behind us with a few teams having a few games in hand, but I wanted to. So up until the 16th of December, we were flying. We'd had 5 wins in the bounce. We were several points ahead in the league. And then we come to Christmas. So we played Fleetwood on the 23rd, Bristol Rovers on the 26th, and Exeter on the 29th. And although we got 2 draws out of it, and nearly got a draw at Bristol Rovers after, he changed the formation and we battered them for the last 20 minutes, and it looked like there was only one winner, and then they break and score on us. What do we think happened there? Is it just the usual Pompey Xmas Curse, or was there a particular element that has also bled into January to some extent?
I'm a firm believer that I don't care how much money you get paid. I don't care whether it's football, whether you've got glory, you've got the fans. It's still, there's an element of it. I'm sure they love their job, but it's still their job. So honestly, did either of you two in your job, did your mentality towards Christmas start to, your head starts going into holiday mode, you're starting to wind down? Did that happen to either of you two?
My head's always in holiday mode, mate, whether it's Christmas or not.
Well, it happened to me. It happened to me. It happens to everyone else around me. You ask a colleague, "Oh, could you, give us a hand with this, doing this?" They're like, yeah, no, you've got one eye on the Christmas do." I don't know. Is it possible that there's an element of that everyone just went off and got fat and drunk too much?
Well, possibly. That was 3 games in 7 days, so it's quite a packed schedule. But we did suddenly just play really abysmally after. If you've got to remember that we smashed Shrewsbury away 3-0 on the 16th of December, and the Monday before we beat a very, very good Bolton team with possibly the best centre forward display I've seen in many a year from Yengi. And then it just 2 weeks later we look like we're relegation fodder. It's just really bizarre, isn't it?
Here's the thing: you just made a statement about Yengi. For the first 35 minutes of that Bolton game, he was poor. He was poor.
I thought, yeah, I would contrast that. I would contrast that with him being wrestled by their centre half.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden something clicked, and he was like, "Do you know what? I can get better with you if I start doing this and start moving, and start putting you around." And then in the last 7 minutes of that first half, he clicked, and then the second half, he was absolutely on fire. No bones about it. What did he do the following week? Nothing.
Dull as dishwater.
Yeah. And was that because he'd changed his mindset?
The crowd anxiety kicks in. Yeah, because Pompey fans, we're fickle. Every Christmas, every December, November, we start fucking up. Sorry for swearing.
Right.
we start.
It's an adult podcast, Jeff. You can say whatever you like, mate.
For that.
Yeah.
we start dropping points, and we dropped points after that game, and then the anxiety creeps in, and then we drop some more points, and more anxiety creeps in. And I've long said what when the fans and the team are united in this symbiotic state, what affects one affects the other. When you've got a huge amount of anxiety come out of 3.5 stands at Fratton Park, now the fans are in the Milton end, that goes over onto the pitch. Yet, contrast to that, when you've got a full Fratton Park absolutely singing and chanting and whatever, you get performances like the second half of Bolton. So it's this yin and yang. That anxiety started to build up over the Christmas period. Like Jamie said, your mentality changes over Christmas. Here we go. Here's the capitulation. Now we're going to start. It was a 7-point lead, and it was a 6 point, and 5 points. Even I said on Twitter, I said Bolton are going to come up from behind, and they're going to have games in hand, and they're going to be, Peterborough, Barnsley. These teams are going to slowly chip away at that, and all of a sudden those 5 points will go down to 1 point. And if you're not lucky, if we don't pick up some results, we could find out, this was 2 weeks ago, if we never picked up those wins and draws, we could have been fourth now. Could have been fourth. And that's where that anxiety creeps in. And like I said, it filters over. I've also long said that, we've got a very hardcore away group. When you lose the hardcore away group, you lose the Fratton end at home. When you lose the Fratton end at home, your days are pretty much numbered. What I've seen recently is that hardcore element of away fans are starting to galvanise again. They're starting to, get behind this team. You saw it at Oxford last night. Saw it away at, I can't remember, going out there. But you start to get the backing of the away.
Fleetwood and Port Vale, yeah. So last three results: away to Fleetwood, away to Port Vale, away to Oxford.
You start to get this, reinvigoration of the away fans getting behind them, and that will now transpire over to the home game on Saturday against Northampton. There'll be the odd smattering of disbelief and discontent and everything else if we're not kind of fans in the ground. I always say I don't preach to tell people how to support the team, but I'm a firm believer that from minute 1 all the way through to minute 97, you get behind that team. Minute 98, when you're walking out of Fountain Park, moan as much as you want, go on social media, do whatever you want. It's fair game.
In the pub.
If they've played crap, you and this is what I think at the moment, the fan base over the last couple of weeks are split on this. You can 100% get behind that team for 98 minutes. And like I said, as soon as you leave, you are in your rights to criticise that team, criticise the management, and criticise what went on. You can do that. That doesn't make you any less of a fan. But, this team, I think, deserves to be supported for the duration of that game. And you go on social media and go, why are you moaning? I'm not moaning. I'm saying that wasn't good enough. And then 10 minutes later, John Mousinho comes out at his press conference and goes, that wasn't good enough. And then you see the fans that moan at, likes of me, saying that's not good enough, that was pathetic. And all of a sudden they don't say anything. The manager's saying it wasn't good enough, it was pathetic. So why is that any different? And that's then you get the small minority getting on Colby Bishop's back and the ear cupping thing.
Yeah, that was bizarre, wasn't it? I mean, I'm not on X Twitter anymore. I haven't been for a few years now, and so I'm not aware of what current trends are in criticism of Pompey or not. But yeah, I was really surprised by it. I hadn't seen that sort of thing coming up. So what was being said about Bishop that he might have seen online?
Going back about Yengi. Yengi was the better striker. Yengi should be playing. Oh, look, when we had Yengi in the team, we were winning games. Colby's come back in, we're not winning. Well, anyone with half a football brain would know, well, Yengi's going off playing the Asia Cup. Colby Bishop's been out injured. I need to get Colby Bishop back up to match fitness before Yengi goes away, because I can't just throw him in cold in 3 games' time without being match sharp. So I need to bed Colby back in now, have the backup of Yengi on the bench if it doesn't work, and go for it that way. Anyone who's got an ounce of football knowledge go, yeah, that's the right way to do it. And because people were getting on Colby's back, he done the ear cup. Now, if he had not ear cupped, the small 5% of social media users on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, wouldn't have even registered with the now 95% of users. Because now the ear cupping, well, why is he ear cupping? And then they start looking about why he's ear cupping. And then and then the debate between Bishop and Yengi, it avalanches. It comes into this big crescendo. It comes into something it's not even really worth. They're 2 very good strikers. They complement each other. I've said it before. Play it. If we got to play a 3-5-2 and put Yengi and Bishop up there. So when the centre half's knackered from being battered by Bishop, he's now got to go up with the pace and strength of Yengi. And then after,
interestingly, last night he did. I mean, I was wanted him to change it to 3-5-2 at half time because I could see Devlin was struggling, and he was the natural person to go off. Eventually, he did it after 56 minutes or whatever it was. But he still only played with the one striker, and he had the 2 support attacking midfielders, which was Lang when he came on, and also Per Harris, and that worked because all of a sudden we had. The whole of the first half, we had no one round Bishop. There was 2 real comical flick-ons that he did where there wasn't a Pompey player within 15, 20 yards of him. But he went up for the header, flicked it on, and then looked around and went, where's my teammates? So it worked in the second half.
For a long time, though, hasn't it? It's been like that for really long. That's why, for me, it's refreshing seeing those 2 coming in. And like you say, like last night, you could see it instantly. It's like we were on the attack, we were a threat. Whereas before, it feels like sometimes we're playing and we've got, 10 men in the one half and Colby up there on his own. And unless we can get that ball out when we were purely doing the pass back.
Yeah,
I mean, as Colby as well, he's got to be frustrated. You've got, and I think Jeff, you hit the nail on the head when I think you said anyone with half a brain. I think you hit the nail right on the head there, mate. Pompey, bless it, for 1,000 years, Pompey was bred to send people to war. And before guns, that was with a big sword or a big stick. And and that's the sort of people we bred. That's the sort of people that survived. We aren't a city famous for our astrophysicists. Let's put it like that. And I think when fans, that aren't, when a large amount of our fans get pissed off, they just lash out. And where do you lash out? Well, we're not scoring goals. It must be Colby's fault. And for me, I'm watching that pitch and I think, well, it's not Colby's fault. The poor guy's getting no service. You can't,
And thing, you look at the service that Yengi gets. Yengi gets balls on the floor, plays into the half space, goes in behind, and everything else. That's not Bishop's forte. Bishop's is get the ball in the box, headers, crosses, volleys. Use that. If you're 1-on-1 with Colby Bishop in the air, there's a 25% chance you're getting that ball, and 75% chance he's getting it, and it's going in the back of the net. Whereas Yengi wants the ball on the floor. When you look at Lane and Kamara, or White and Scully when he's on the pitch, or you look at Martin, they're not wingers who are going to get to the byline like we grew up watching Vince Lair and Chamberlain and and all that, and Jeff Perron and players like that getting to the byline, whipping that ball in. They're not that kind of player. They're the kind of player who wants to get on the edge of the 18-yard box, play intricate passes. So those wingers suit Yengi. So it's no surprise why Yengi looks the better striker, because the players around him want to play that way. The players, the wingers we have, need to go, Colby's playing today. So we've either got to play the ball up to him for him to hold it up, and then we're going to support, we're going to make those runs beyond him. The midfield need to get beyond him. The wingers need to get beyond him, or we need to get to the byline and whip it in. And if Paddy Lane should go and Abu Kamara's whipping it on the right wing, I need to be on the back post.
We've only got one winger, and he's a left back. Unfortunately, the rest of them are inside forwards, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we scored our equaliser last night. Camera for the first time got goal side of his marker, and he managed to get a low ball across the goal where we scored from. And that's where as you're alluding to, Jeff, a lot of his productivity is getting behind or past his marker and getting balls not whipped in from distance like Sparks would do, but those 10-15 yard passes into the box or a chip across to the back post for Bishop. But that seems to me the way that Mousinho wants to play. He wants those overloads on the wing. So that if you look at the heat map from yesterday, we constantly had two players in those final third corners, trying to work the ball around into an angle to try and get Camera or try and get Lane behind their man, and then get a low cross into the box for Bishop to finish it off. But the reason we scored the equaliser and the winner is because we also had another player in the box with Lang. So Lang's goal reminded me of Walsh a bit last night, the way he's close control in the box and he managed to turn and whip it into the corner.
That was some goal.
It was brilliant, and what a debut for him! Really, must give him a huge amount of confidence.
Yeah.
So I think we've all agreed that Mousinho is quite the pragmatist, and he's not really going to change the way he plays. So I fully expect him to line up 4-2-3-1 for the rest of the season. But at least he's got more options from the bench and more options in the starting lineup, maybe than he had. It's not just going to be a choice between Yengi and Bishop. It can be a combination of three: Yengi, Bishop, and Lang, and then how he gets more bodies into the box for us to play with.
I touched on this just before we started rolling, and you were here, Jeff. I think one of my theories about why we lost a lot of those games was because we were playing teams in the lower half of the league, but we carried on playing, like I said, 10 men in one half and Colby up front. And I think, all right, okay, if you want to me, if you want to win the league, you've got to play that kind of counter football. That seems to be what we're doing with success with when we're beating teams like Bolton. We're almost letting them come on to us because they're big teams. They know how to play football. We're getting the counter. We're playing men behind the ball, and then when we break, we score and we punish them for it. To me, you can't do that against the shit teams at the bottom of the table. You've got to attack them. You've got to use we've got better players than them. We've got a better squad than them. And I think if you don't play attacking football, you don't use that. And so I'm hoping. So Scott, you've just said there, you think he'll carry on playing the same way for the rest of the season. I'm hoping that he's learned something here, that you've got to go on the attack sometimes. And now it looks like we've bought the players to do it. I mean, okay, Kamara's got quite a few goals, and so's Lane. They've both done really well. But I often said, we only really had like 2 or 3 attacking players or naturally gifted attacking players in the squad, and it now seems like with MPH and Lang coming in, we've got hopefully got a couple of more options there, and we can play more attacking.
Yeah, that leads me nicely into the next probably thing we could discuss. So February, I mean the team. So we got Northampton at home, Carlisle away, Cambridge at home on a Tuesday night, and then home to Reading and away to Charlton. That's February. I mean that's a good February for us, isn't it? Surely that's at least 12, 13 points. We'd be ending February on 62 points.
Yeah, and you're in the final straight, aren't you? This is the start of this is the business end of the league. Jamie makes a valid point there about possession. I've long said it that there's 2 ways of playing possession football. You see out a game with 5 minutes to go and you slow the game down and you keep the ball, or you ping the ball around and you do. You'll know this, Scott. You've seen me on a Monday and Tuesday night coaching the football. Term called move to create, where you've got to move the ball fast. You've got to move around the pitch fast to make players either follow you, or actually, if they don't follow you, you've moved into an area of the pitch where you can receive the ball, and therefore you've got more time. So I think at the beginning of the season, we were pinging that ball around and we were really dynamic and really fast. And like you said, Jamie, when teams come at us, we exploit those gaps. Where we struggle is, like you said, 10 men behind the ball. They're not pressing us. You go, okay, there was an instance last night where Oxford totally sat off us. Raggett and Shottlesey had all the time in the world and Will Norris went long. Why have you gone long when they've got 11 players left? That was the time to play short, start playing some dynamic, move to create, ping the ball around, get Marlon Pack on the ball. He's got a great range of passing and can ping it out left and right. But it's that in-game decision-making that sometimes we just go, yeah, I'm going to do this instead. Or, there's times where we go short where we should be going long, or we're going long and we should be going short. And I think over the last 2 or 3 games, maybe 4 games, probably 5, thinking about it, when we've played possession football, we're kind of pedestrian. We're kind of just playing like we should be playing at 87, 88 minutes, rather than we're on the front foot and we're going to make you make a mistake. The quality.
Well, that's why it's so interesting about the next 5 games is that they are all very beatable teams. Charlton away might be a bit more tricky than the rest, but they're all. I mean, especially Northampton, they're on a good run, but. You'd want to really go at them from the first minute and see if you can get a couple of goals early on, and then, as Jamie says, you use that possession to sit back and hit them on the counter attack when they want to try and because they're on 40 points. Northampton, they're looking upwards towards a playoff place. They're not one of these teams who are are almost given up on their season, like maybe a Charlton. Charlton will win one and lose one. They're not going to be relegated. They're not going to get promoted. So then they're a team that are going to be comfortably mid-table. Northampton on their run, they're looking to try and win the game on Saturday. So as Jamie says, if we've got the better players, have a go. And this was the frustration with the first half last night against Oxford, is that inability, especially with players who've got talent like Pert Harris. He was receiving the ball in space and immediately turning around and playing it backwards to a centre half or a midfielder, and it was so frustrating to see that Oxford didn't trouble us until they scored. They really didn't. They didn't offer anything. They were trying to as a draw, and then see what they could do in the second half. And we really cocked up royally for their chance. We had a 3-on-3 or a 2-on-3, and it was a good shot in the corner. But up until that point, they hadn't troubled us. So we could have played with far more freedom. And I think that's the frustration, especially at home, that we don't have a go at teams. So it'd be really interesting to see what we do with these next 5 games, because as you said, Jeff, this is where it counts. If we can get 4 wins out of 5 for the next 5, then it doesn't matter about the teams behind us and their games in hand, because we're keeping winning and we're piling those points up.
The only concern I've got is goal difference. You need to start getting twos and threes rather than ones. Bolton's, Peterborough's, and I think Barnsley's goal difference, probably Derby's, is superior to ours by 4 or 5 goals. That's worth an extra point. That's worth it. You come down to the last game of the season, unless we're going to fluke it like 2017 and beat Cheltenham 6-1 at home.
So the highest total is only 6. So Peter are only 6 above us, and the others are 2 or 3. So it's not as bad. It's not too bad. The same as the points with. I'm looking at the table. We're on. Bolton obviously look really threatening with their 3 games in hand, but if you look at some of the fixtures over the next few weeks, some of the top 6 play each other. So not everyone's going to win all of their games in hand. It's going to, and we've got an opportunity in February to really put the pedal down and get over 70 points as quickly as we can.
Bolton go to Peterborough in the last game of the season.
Yeah, well, let's hope we're promoted by then, and it doesn't matter. We've already won the title by early April.
We've still got Bolton and Peterborough away as well, haven't we?
Yeah. They're 6 pointers. They are 6 pointers.
Yeah. So I want to touch on what we were just talking about there. I think for me, the key problem is I never like to. I try not to say negative stuff about players, even when they deserve it. I think we've got Paul. Paul's gone. Yeah, and since Paul's gone, played against Blackpool, and they rinsed us, and that's why we're not playing it out from the back anymore. Either I don't know if it's the manager or it's the goalie, but the goalie has definitely lost confidence in his back four's ability to ping it around as much, and he ain't letting them. He's not giving them the ball. He's hoofing it up there, and he's doing that because Paul isn't in the squad. I mean, Paul was, when we had him in defence, he was amazing. We weren't shipping goals till we never let goals in, and since the day he's gone, it was good. It was okay, fine, we're last in, and then it's just been a downward for me in performance at the back. It's been a downward spiralling slope, and we are missing our leader in defence. I love Raggett to bits, but he's not filled that gap, and his ball playing skills aren't as good.
I mean, to be fair to Raggett, though, we did when he came in after Paul's injury. We did win 5 games. And
I did
concede.
say that. Yeah, I did say that. It's been a slope since, and it's the ball playing. It's not. It's a different style. You can't play like Brazil if you haven't got the players to be able to do that at the back. And to me, that's why we're not doing it anymore, because he's not there anymore.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting time between now and hopefully our second podcast, which I've really enjoyed chatting to you guys. It's been really good. Just quickly before we finish, this January transfer window is probably, although we haven't really bought any bombastic players, we've bought some good quality players. I mean, Jeff, you know a bit more about Moxon than I do. I must admit, he's not one on my radar. Nor McIntyre, really. Per Harris, I've seen before, and knew he was not quite the same as Robertson, but had the same sort of pedigree and quality. So I think. Is this been the best January we've had for quite some years? No.
No. So okay, I've got some strong views on this. How many points have we shipped in? Why didn't we make those signings January 1st? I mean, none of them are players we were waiting for. None of them, there was no There was no like when you're moving a house, there was no chain. There was no we've got to sell so and so to get so and so. All of those all the players that have come in, and also John's been saying the whole time, I want a right-sided centre back. Is he coming tonight? Was this right? Because the other one's a left-sided centre back, and he's not ready for first-team football. In John's own words today. Yes, I'm delighted that we've signed Lang and miles per hour, as they're calling him.
What's first thing tomorrow?
But is that our problem, or as I was alluding to before, are our problems at the back because we're shipping goals and we weren't before until Paul got injured? Are we going to replace him?
You make a really good valid point about at the back. Raggett's now shifted over to left centre half. Now Conor Ogilvy's back at left back. Shocknessy has gone to right centre half because Devlin isn't a natural right back. He can do a job there, but he isn't a natural right back. So John's obviously gone, well, if I need to give some like play out from the back to a degree, I've got Conor on the left and I've got Conor Shocknessy on the right. You can help Devlin out, and Raggett is going to provide the defensive cover for Conor Ogilvy to play out from that way. Now, I've seen people on social media, why is Shocknessy playing right centre half? Because he's right-footed. He's played the majority of his career at right centre half, but he's like Raggett to play left centre half. They're both right-footers. So Tom McIntyre coming in now means you've got Riley Towler and Tom McIntyre, both natural left-footers. So is McIntyre going to be thrown in on Saturday? Probably not. Will it be available, I would say, in about 3 or 4 games' time when he gets his match sharpness back, because he's come back from a 4-month injury. So then you would say, well, you got Rafferty back this week. So there's your, Swanson's out.
Thank God.
Swanson's out for another 4 to 6 weeks, I believe.
Okay.
And then now you've got a right back who can play out and do overlaps. Now you've got Shocknessy in 3 weeks' time playing right centre half who can play the ball out from the back. McIntyre is a left centre back, ball playing centre half. He's coming in. You've got Ogilvy on the left back. So that defensive frailty disappears to a degree. And was it too much of a change to move Raggett and Shocknessy around in the last couple of games? Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Hindsight, you can go, well, yeah, but what would have happened if they kept Raggett and Devlin on the right and Shocknessy and Ogilvy on left? You don't know. It's hypothetical, isn't it? So it's we've picked up points. Yeah, okay, and then last night, Oxford's equaliser. It's just a comedy of errors. People blaming Norris, people blaming Towler, Raggett. Look at the midfield, non-existent. When you watch it back and analyse it, I do. I'm doing my UEFA C at the moment. I analyse videos of the game. Straight away last night, Lowry stops. Lowry sees Norris save the ball, and he stops. He doesn't stop. He that's gone over, and he kind of jutters. That allows Henry to have a unopposed header into the back
extra yard. Yeah.
Okay. But you've got
wasn't a good night for Lowry because he was at fault for the first goal as well with his hospital pass ball across the middle. So
but you look at the midfield. Where's the midfield? Where's Marlon Pack shielding that back three? Where's I'm sure Conor Ogilvy could have lasted another 9 minutes. If you wanted,
I'd have kept Conor on.
If you wanted to hold on to a 2-1 lead, why didn't you take Lane or Kamara off? Bring Towler on.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the same.
Then you've got Ogilvy, Towler, Shocknessy, and Raggett at the back.
Yeah.
You've expressed exactly what I said to the guy next to me with a few minutes to go. Why did you go back to a back four again and take Lang off? Not Lang, sorry, put Harris off. Yeah. But anyway, it's like you say, both goals were really poor midfield play, really. More less so than defence. We lost the ball in midfield, and we didn't clear the ball or close it down properly when the cross went back in for the shot. It's just a shame, really, isn't it?
Hopefully, Mox has signed it, because I was watching his videos today and he looks fantastic.
He's and I texted Neil Allen last night, and he replied to me, "If you love Moxon, don't you?" Which I laughed at. I said, "Surely they're not going to wait to find out Joe Morell's injury. They're just going to go and get him. I said, that will happen. I said, that will happen by tomorrow afternoon. He'll be down here by tomorrow afternoon, if not Thursday morning latest, and it will happen. And I said, I wouldn't be surprised if there's one more player that will come out of the blue. And I think that one player depends on if Scully or White go out on loan, because they have not made they didn't make the squad last night. You've brought Lang in. You've got Kamara and Lane.
Well, perhaps it's something we'll discuss in a couple of weeks with our next one, because the Scully and White. So I mean, they we won't go into too much of it now, but they were brought in as not marquee signings, but they were supposed to be impressive signings at the start, and they've not made any impression on the season at all, have they? White in particular, because he hasn't had the long injury that Scully had. Listen, guys, it's been fantastic, this first one. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I have, and I'll get this out hopefully by Saturday morning. And I'm hoping if anyone out there is listening that they've enjoyed it, and we'll do another one in a couple of weeks. So, Jamie, Jeff, gentlemen, it's been an absolute honour and a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll speak to you in a couple of weeks. Take care.